earlier today, I got a download, I believe, from Spirit. Somebody would maybe say I just had the thought. I think about things a little differently now, but I had the thought, or I got a download that I should kind of like take a little video of the pictures of my son Ruben, who died when I was about 6 months pregnant. There's kind of a longer story, but I was like, nobody wants to see that. Why would I want to do that? And then I was actually messing with my hair, and so my hands have dye on them and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm taking a video and I've got like dye on my hands again. But I took a little video of these snapshots. It was really hard when I had him. So first of all, I'll just go ahead and tell the story. So I had, this was my fifth. I know that sounds so crazy. Let's see. This was my fourth live birth. It was not my fourth pregnancy. I've had 17 pregnancies and 11 live births. And so this was going back about 18 years ago. And I was young. And my daughter, who's like 25 now, so my math might be off, but she's 25 now and closer to 26, and she was scared of a thunderstorm, which ended up being God's way of waking me up. She came, I mean, that wasn't normal. Like, if she didn't always come during a thunderstorm, but she woke me up, and as soon as she woke me up, I felt that because I was asleep, I hadn't noticed, but I felt this intense pressure, like if anyone who's had a baby knows the way that, like, that pressure, like when you're going to deliver or something, but it was, pretty bad. I got up and went to the toilet. I didn't know what was going on, and the whole sack, not the whole sack, okay, but the sack that the baby was in was protruding out like a balloon out of my vagina, which was terribly scary. And I was in my 20s, so I was young. So we, got the kids and got in the van, and I literally was like, the husband dropped me off like at the emergency room door when he went to go park, and we had friends coming to take the kids, and I literally was walking with, like, I was crouched down, like almost like a squat, and I was doing everything I could to hold everything in. And obviously they took me immediately. I ended up being in the hospital for a week. Like that night I had surgery. They tucked everything back in and sutured my cervix closed. And then they put my bed kind of like with my feet up and my head down, and that's the way I was for at least a couple of days. And I can't remember, I think it was a high doses of magnesium that they were giving me. Anyway, in a week's time, my body was going into labor, and the doctor couldn't get there when the doctor on call couldn't get there in a timely manner, and my body was going into labor. And it was kind of scary because it was like my cervix was going to maybe rip because they had sutured it with this, it really looks like a zip tie. And so it's plastic and strong, very strong. And so, my cervix is not as strong as that. And so it was kind of like really scary. And the nurse was great. She was very young and she was crying. I was crying. I was a Christian for just probably a few years then. And I was, well, jump ahead after I ended up losing the baby. The baby's heartbeat and everything was great when he was still in the womb. It was really, really hard. The spouse, who I now know was abusing me even then, would not hold the baby, and that hurt me. And then the nurses, except for that first original nurse, they had changed shifts. And so every nurse from then on out referred to the baby as an it, which on one hand I understand because the baby doesn't look normal, healthy and plump and, the right size and all that. But all of those things were very, very hard. All of it together, not having the spouse's support, and then kind of not really feeling like you had the nurse's support. They kind of, half of them shrugged their shoulders, and just to them it wasn't a real baby, but to me it was. And I guess I'll probably put a note on here in case anybody wouldn't want to see these pictures, because I know that it is a little horrific. So my, all my kids are half black, so that's one reason of the dark coloring, but of course that's not the color. My babies are pretty light when they're born, and even full black babies are a lot of times light when they're born, not always, but the baby is like more of this reddish brown color because of just being very underdeveloped. I do remember at the time it really speaking to me of just how well formed everything already was at that point. And I have met one child who was kind of like forever stunted in their growth, like size wise, but they were the same week and had survived. But I had a neonatal friend in that state. This was when I lived in Mississippi, and she wasn't practicing anymore, but she told me later that when she found out and we had talked on the phone, she tried to give me some hope, but that she didn't want to even really tell me the brutal truth, which was that it was just such a far chance that the baby would survive. So basically, with the suturing of the cervix and the surgery and everything that they did, they were trying to just keep me pregnant for like, if I could have been pregnant for another month or something, it would have really increased the chances of the baby surviving. So I named him Reuben, which I was a Christian, and in the Hebrew that supposedly means, behold a son. So there was a nice person who, I didn't meet him, but he made these nice little very small wood caskets. Just he was a carpenter, just as a nicety, and I was provided with one of those, and we had the option of like just disintegrating the body, because it was almost like looked at as the way an aborted baby would be, and just not really human by most of the staff at the hospital, which was so hard for me. But instead, we opted to bury the baby, and there were some nice people that we were broke then, as normal, and we actually did better later with less money and more kids somehow. But it's me, I'm the somehow. But anyway, there was some church folk and the homeschool community that we were part of that looked out for us and bought a plot. I think that, and they dug everything, and I think the pastor later told me like that they had dug maybe more like for when I lost my son, who died as a toddler. Ethan, he died. This would have been years later that Ethan was born and died at 18 months. So his casket size was, I don't know if you would say maybe like 2.5 or 3 feet long. They had kind of dug a hole more substantial than they needed to. And the pastor had kind of commented to me that, it was, the casket was smaller than he could have imagined. So I don't know why I felt like I was supposed to share this, and I will try to post something as a warning, like a trigger warning or something. But this is Reuben. I will say, as the months went on, I had a friend, part of my homeschool group down there. She was a mom, and I think we both had like the same amount of kids so far. Like we both had 3 kids so far, and we were very close in age, and she was pregnant with twins, and our due dates were like neck and neck. And so when I had this baby early and he didn't live, she would have gone on to, have the bigger and bigger and bigger belly, especially because she was having twins. And then, she would have gone to have 2 healthy babies. And I really just remember struggling with that on the level of, and I think it's okay to feel whatever feelings we have, but just on that level of like, it's not fair. Why does she get to have 2? And I, my baby dies. And, and she had a nice Christian husband, and I had like a jerk for a husband. We can just start comparing everything and feel very downcast and stuff. But, obviously I had to work through all of those things. And I did. And as I took this little blue box out tonight and recorded this short video, I didn't cry. Like, I'm still moved, and I don't think it'd be wrong if I did cry. But I mean, time does heal wounds, and not just time, but time and, reflection and acceptance, radical acceptance helps a lot. And I've had many miscarriages that were 3 months, that weren't just like, I've had some that were earlier as well, but, and then when my son, who died at 18 months, like, I remember that was so much harder than this, but this had helped prepare me for that, because, when my son Ethan died and he had been living, he had been born and healthy and normal, and, got trapped in his bed because of his climbing tendencies, during his nap. Like, he wasn't sick or anything. So that was so much more devastating, because we had gotten to know him. We knew his little personality. This was still very hard. And sometimes I feel like, we do, I think, as humans, we tend to compare. We compare everything. We can compare cars. We compare hair. We compare everything, right? But, like, when it really comes down to it, pain is pain and grief is grief. And, I think it's okay if I'm saying, this son that died of mine this was a harder thing to go through. I'm comparing my own grief with my own grief. But, it's not to downplay anybody who has, I don't want to even say only had a miscarriage, but let's say someone who's had a miscarriage and who's never dealt with actually, like, giving birth to a child that dies, or having, like, your child die that is, already born and healthy and alive and whatever age. Like, I haven't lost a parent yet, but it's okay. Like, we don't have to compare having a miscarriage when you haven't had any other kind of loss in that regard as far as children. That's so hard, and so, time does help. Radical acceptance, and of course now I don't hold to those same beliefs as a very radical Christian, but I almost like the way I believe better now. I really tend to hold to, like, I think we do come back, and I think Earth keeps going, and I definitely believe in a God that is bigger than us, and that there's just so much order. And so anyway, I hope the pictures of my little Reuben can at least be a testament of how everything forms together in the womb. And, I guess I'm not radically against abortion. I wouldn't have an abortion. I do believe that just with anything, whether it's your sexual preference or anything, as long as you're not, like, harming children or something like that, I think that as long as you're not doing something illegal, we should have the freedom as adults to have the freedom of choice, the freedom to choose. I don't just mean for an abortion, but including that. I don't believe in, like, basically I don't believe that we should have power over people and try to, like, constrain them and make them, force them to do something that they don't want to do. But, I don't know, like I said, why. I just am sharing. So, all right, thanks.